Welcome to AKPsi's webinar titled Women in Business, Dayna Thomas. This webinar is a part of the Women in Business interview series within the Leadership series. My name is Mackenzie Lauka, and I serve AKPsi as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be your webcast producer. Before we dive into the content, I would like to review the web-based features available to you. This webinar will be advanced remotely, but at the bottom of your screen, there are multiple application widgets you can use throughout the program. I encourage you to utilize the widgets to download additional resources, connect with other attendees during the presentation, and share highlights via social media. A copy of the slide deck and other additional materials are available in the resource list widget that looks like a green folder. The group chat is available for you to interact with other attendees and the presenter during the presentation. When posting, it will share your first name and last initial. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers most common technical issues. Additionally, each of the windows on your screen are also able to be resized, moved, and adjusted to fit your individual learning need. At the end of the program, I'll explain how you can ask a question to our presenter. If you have a question throughout the program, however, you can launch the Q&A widget to submit your question. Your questions will be asked at the end of the program in the order they are received. Be sure to also check out our social media content. Portions of today's program will be tweeted using the hashtag AKPsiChat. You can follow along using the Twitter widget in the menu dock at the bottom of the screen, as well as post highlights to your own Twitter feed using the hashtag. You may also find some valuable resources on the AKPsi blog, Facebook page, Instagram feed, LinkedIn page, Twitter feed, and our YouTube channel, each of which are available from the akpsi.org homepage. This webinar is part of the ongoing series of Women in Business leadership positions that discusses their individual success in the business world and the steps they took along their journey. Today's webinar will be an interview style with entertainment entrepreneur attorney Dayna Thomas. In addition to covering her story, we'll leave time for your questions and comments. Before we get started, I'll provide a little bit of background on Dayna. Dayna Thomas Esquire is an Atlanta-based entertainment entrepreneurship attorney and author with a passion for helping people build their lives, careers, and businesses with the support of the law. She focuses her practice on assisting entrepreneurs and entertainers in reaching their goals, protecting their businesses, and building strong personal and professional brands. Along with providing legal services, Dayna also coaches clients through the startup process and serves as a speaker at conferences and events to educate and empower aspiring and new entrepreneurs and teach them how to develop a winning entrepreneurial mindset. She's also the author of Entrepreneur's Guide to Building a Solid Legal Foundation, in which she exposes entrepreneurs to the fundamentals of business law to help prepare their business for the wild success. So Dayna, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first question. So Dayna, why did you want to be an entrepreneur?
Wow. So honestly, that whole idea of becoming an entrepreneur came to me when I was in my first or second year of law school. And so when I first entered law school, I went to school at Emory University. School of Law. And so at first I was doing pretty much what everyone else was doing. And I like to call it like a robot, because everyone's in law school, everybody's competing, everybody wants to be on moot court, mock trial journal, all of that. And it seemed like if you weren't doing that singular pathway, then you weren't really important in law school or you weren't really doing it the right way. And so at first I was conforming to what everyone was doing. And so a part of that is trying to get a job at a big firm. And so if you're not really interested in law, that's comparable to working at a big corporation. And so you may have heard that working at these corporations or big firms, you don't really get that much work-life balance. You may work so many hours. They don't really care about you as a person. It's just so much results-driven, and you don't really get that interaction with clients. And so I felt like I had worked too hard up to that point in my life to really just not be happy in my career. And so I realized early on that working for a corporation or the big firm style wasn't for me. And so I started to pay attention to small firms and solo practitioners, and I worked with some solo attorneys in smaller firms. And I liked that environment better. It gave me a better work-life balance. However, I had so many ideas on how to make the business better that it was just driving me crazy. And so what I did is I chose to spend some time either if it was outside of work or if it was on my lunch break, I spent time helping the firm to rebrand. And so a part of that was doing their website over. I did their whole website over. They never made it live, unfortunately. They encouraged me to get some graphic designers to kind of work on a new logo for them, a new business card for them, and they never did anything different. And so for me, it was very important for my brand as a new lawyer to be the brand that I wanted it to be. If I was going to work with entertainers and entrepreneurs, how could I really gain them as clients if my own brand wasn't what I wanted it to represent? And so after a while, I realized, well, why am I working this hard to use my skills in marketing and branding and everything else to build someone else's business when I could really just do this for myself? And so I had decided at that time that, you know what, starting my own firm and being an entrepreneur was probably the best path for me, because none of these types of firms really worked for me. I didn't like the big firms. It didn't have enough client interaction and work-life balance, and I wouldn't be happy. And the smaller firms, even though it kind of had those things, I was just making their business so much better. I had all these ways to do that. And I just thought to myself, you know what, I'm not going to spend all of my time and talent and treasure and skills in building your business, when I could do it for myself. And so that's when I, first got the click in my head, to really be an entrepreneur.
I think that's great, Dayna. So you did mention that you're an entrepreneur and entertainment lawyer. What made you kind of choose those specific avenues of law?
Okay, so actually on the entertainment side, that's what started me out in the beginning. So when I was younger, I was a little girl, and I was actually the entertainer. So I was a professional dancer. I did ballet, tap, jazz, even some cowboy dancing. We traveled to dance. I auditioned for The Lion King on Broadway, in school plays. I sang in choirs, and just a lot of different avenues of entertainment. I love being in front of the camera. But as I got older, I didn't really like that anymore, and I started to be more interested in business and law. My first law class was as a senior in college, and so I was wondering to myself, well, how can I marry the two? Because I didn't want to abandon entertainment, but I didn't want to be an entertainer. And so that's when I decided to pursue entertainment law and learn more about that. And so I came to Atlanta to pursue entertainment law, and strictly entertainment law, because at that time, when I was graduating from high school, Atlanta was the place to be. And I went to high school in New York. I grew up in New York. And so even though it seems like New York is a huge place for entertainment, it is, but, not so much to start out. And so at that time, Atlanta has music coming to New York, a lot of culture coming to New York. And so that's when I decided that I was going to go to Georgia State University, which was in central downtown Atlanta, to pursue the whole entertainment law. And so actually getting into law school, when I first started in law school, I was strictly entertainment law. You couldn't talk to me about anything except if it was for entertainment law. I wasn't taking any electives unless it helped me to get there. I wasn't going to any events unless it was entertainment law based. But once I started to realize that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I realized that I can mix the two. And I started to love entrepreneurship so much. I love learning about it and loving to pursue it, that I said that, I want to use my skills in law to help more entrepreneurs as well. So that's how I kind of came up with entertainment and entrepreneurship. And even though it seems like those two are so different, they're really not. A lot of the same concepts in entrepreneurship overlap to entertainment as well, and vice versa. So that's how both of those came about.
That's awesome. It's a great way to kind of combine all of your different passions together. So now that we kind of know a little bit more about your background, what were some of your biggest influences in your career and in founding your law office?
Sure. And honestly, I am not just saying this. Alpha Kappa Psi, played a huge role in me being where I am as an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a speaker, an author, and just the person that I am as a professional right now. And I'll bring you back to when I was pledging at Georgia State. And so during that time, that was spring 2010 at the Pi chapter at Georgia State. And so before AKPsi, I had a really good, during that whole time in school, I had a really good GPA, very smart. but no one ever knew because I was so shy. Like, I hated wearing business attire. I would never go to career fairs or internship fairs or anything like that because I felt so uncomfortable. And I said, okay, well, I have this 3.8 GPA, but nobody is going to know because I'm so nervous about interviews. I'm so nervous to talk to people and ask more about their programs. I'm so nervous to wear business attire because whenever I'm wearing business attire, I feel like everyone is staring at me. So because of all those things that I was so uncomfortable with professionally, it was really stopping me from reaching my goals and my full potential. And so when I learned about AKPsi, I'm like, you know what? This is what I need to break out of my shell because there were so many things that I was missing out on professionally. And so after I pledged AKPsi, I was like a completely new person. I went from being so shy and hating business attire to feeling uncomfortable if I'm not in business attire. And so I was also getting more, doing more speaking at school, hosting events, presenting events, being so good at interviews and just everything else that we learn in AKPsi. And so that really exposed me to what being a professional is all about and just being more confident as a professional and not being so nervous when it came to business or professional interviews or anything within that arena. And then also particularly for entrepreneurship, in our chapter, when I first became a brother, we did an event called Pi Gets Money. And so our chapter name was Pi. And then there was a song at the time by 50 Cent, and it was called I Get Money. And so we did a spinoff on that, and that was all about showcasing the entrepreneurs that were in our chapter because we had quite a bit of entrepreneurs in the chapter. They did part-time entrepreneurship or even full-time entrepreneurship and full-time students, and that's full-time students. And so that exposed me to like, wow, this whole entrepreneurship thing is real, and you don't have to reach a certain level in your career or education or whatever it might be. You can start from exactly where you are. So that's kind of my story for how AKPsi has helped me. And then also I have a really cool story about how AKPsi helped me get into Emory. Do you guys want to hear about it? I'm sure you do, Mackenzie.
Absolutely. Share with us.
Okay. So everything that I just told you guys about what I learned in AKPsi, and so Emory University was my dream law school. Like, I did not want to go anywhere else. I had always had my eyes set on Emory, and so it was very important for me to get in. And so I remember when I had my my campus visit to Emory, I did so many things that AKPsi had taught me, and I'll tell you what that got me in the long run, or actually in the short run. And so I had submitted my application, I believe, on a Monday. Monday, I submitted my application. Tuesday, I went into Emory to go on a tour. And so I was the only one out of everyone in business attire. No one else was wearing business attire. It was the summertime. Everybody else is in shorts and flip-flops and T-shirts. And here I am in my suit because I learned that from AKPsi. And I was so comfortable in it because of Alpha Kappa Psi. And so we went on the tour, and then there was an opportunity for us all to sit and hear a presentation and ask questions. And so they asked if anyone had questions. No one had questions except for me. And I had about like 4 or 5 questions, and so they would ask any more questions, and no one would raise their hand, and it would just be me. And that shows interest, and we learned that in AKPsi, or at least at my chapter, that when there's a presentation, it's very important to ask questions. When I asked my question, I stood up, I said my name, and just to make sure everyone knew who I was. And so after that tour, when everyone else left and went home, I actually had a list of people that I researched. When you research the company, I researched the school. And so I had a list of names that I needed to make sure that I met those people before I left. And so I went around the whole school looking at the directory and knocked on doors. Mainly those were people in admissions and financial aid. And so I had my business card. That's something that we do in our chapter as well. I had a business card. I had my picture on it. I don't have a business, but I am marketing myself. It's in my major, and it also had my LinkedIn link and how to contact me. And so the last person that I introduced myself to happened to be, he was the director of admissions and financial aid. And so I knocked on his door, introduced myself, gave him my business card, and asked him to please let me know if there were any opportunities to learn more about Emory. I'd be happy to. And he said that he would put my business card with my application. And so that prompted him to go through everybody else's and pull up my application out of the thousands that they already had. And so 48 hours later, I get home and I have an express mail invitation or acceptance letter into Emory with a $75,000 scholarship. And so I attribute that whole thing to everything that I did at that visit to the school that made me stand out. And what I want to also mention was, yes, I had a really good GPA, but I had a really bad LSAT score. I will say that much. So those of you that are interested in going to law school, the LSAT is a difficult test. I'm not even going to fluff it up, but you can absolutely get through it. And if you don't have the score that you want, then there are other things that you have learned that can help you to get an edge up. And so I had a good GPA, a really bad LSAT score, but because of those things that I learned in AKPsi, it got me into my dream school, and eventually that plays obviously a big part into where I am now.
That was a fantastic story, Dayna. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks. And I have a little bit more to add, too, because, of course, there's influences outside of AKPsi, and, I'm very spiritually connected, so I am guided by my passion. Passion really guides me. I feel like, I can kind of feel it in the direction that I'm going to. So that's a real influence for me. And then 3 people in particular. Oprah, because something that's instilled in me that she says, which are, there are no mistakes. There is a supreme calling in your life, and your job is to hear that, feel that, and know that. So whenever I felt like there was a test or a grade that was bad or an event that didn't go so good or whatever it might be, it just reminds me that these little things, they really don't matter in the big scheme of things. And there's nothing that can stop me from achieving, in the long run, what I really want to achieve. So I learned that from Oprah. And then Steve Harvey, and he says, you can never fly if you don't jump. And so some of us have these goals and aspirations of doing such huge things, but it seems like it's so impossible or difficult to achieve. But you will never know how much success you have if you don't do it. So that was something that really helped me when it came down to pursuing my law firm full time. And then Jim Carrey, and he says, you can fail at what you don't love, so you might as well take a chance at what you love. And that is so true. Sometimes we think that, the safety net or whatever it might be, that is something to be safe. I know how much income I'm going to have. Even though I really want to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to stick with this 9 to 5 that I really hate. But it's like you can fail at that too. They can fire you at any time, or you can be unhappy. That's all failure. So if you can fail at what you don't love, you might as well take a chance at what you love. And so all those things that I learned from those very amazing people, that has helped me to keep going and influence my path so far.
Those are great inspirations. So now being an entrepreneur, it definitely requires a lot of different abilities, different talents. So what are some skills that you think, based off your journey, are really essential to being a business owner, and how have you developed those skills?
Okay, so I actually have quite a few, so I'll elaborate just a bit on each of them, but the number one for me all the time is a positive mindset. You really have to protect your mind. With anything great that you do, what you think you can achieve is really what you can achieve, and what you think you cannot achieve is what you can't achieve. So I know that sometimes when we share our ideas with people, it seems like it's such a far-fetched idea and we don't get the support that we want, or we kind of get some, negative feedback. Just know that you have to protect your mind and keep it positive. Constantly feed it with positive things so that your confidence, which is my next one, can be increased. And so you have to be confident that what you really want to do, you have the tools to do it already. And so just make sure that your mind and your confidence, you're always feeding that, because there will be obstacles, but as long as your mind is right, you'll have the right mentality to keep going. Next is a skill in marketing. So even if your service is not marketing, it's very important to understand a good amount about marketing, because marketing will help you to get people to buy in or pay attention to whatever your product or service is. And so it's very important to even just have a baseline understanding of how to get your message across. And then I would say being an active learner, which, for me means self-education. You have to constantly be teaching yourself information. Undergrad and graduate school, that's great. We need that. but that's only going to teach you so much that you need to know about being an entrepreneur or a business owner. There's going to be so much more that you have to do outside of school and actively learn so that you're constantly giving yourself the information that you need. Because if you're not a marketing major, how are you going to learn about marketing, or whatever your specific industry is? Outside of that, multitasking. When you're an entrepreneur, you're probably going to have so many hats. As the accountant, you might be trying to develop your website at first. You might be doing your social media. You're going to be your customer service. You're going to have all of these different hats, and being able to multitask is very important. So along with multitasking, prioritizing, and so prioritizing, there's going to be so many people that want your time and attention and so many things that need to get done. But, something that I learned in AKPsi is, how to allocate my time properly. So prioritizing is very important. Decision-making. Decision-making is something that we value a lot in AKPsi, and it's definitely, something that plays a huge part in business. There's going to be so many options, or, if you're a perfectionist, that can sometimes hold you back from, being great or moving forward. But you have to make a decision on what you're going to do, especially if it's something great that you want to do. You have to decide to do it and eliminate anything that's going to stop you from doing that, because that's going to show you that a decision has been made. For me, one of the hard things is delegating. So delegating tasks. As an entrepreneur, it seems like we have to do everything alone, or this is a solo journey, but it's really not. We need to collaborate with other people, have partnerships and joint ventures and different things like that so that we can get to the next level. So delegating some things that you don't or can't do specifically yourself in your business. Having that work-life balance is another one. Really, we're pursuing entrepreneurship so that we could have a happier life. We're trying to escape some of the things that might happen with working for someone else, some of the unhappiness or some of the control that you're giving up. So making sure that you have that really good work-life balance is going to help you stay on that path. Organization. Again, this kind of goes back to multitasking. You have so many hats on. So whatever kind of systems that you can have in place to keep you organized, that's going to help as well. Last three are being creative. Well, the second to last is being creative and innovative. You constantly have to figure out, okay, what's next? How can I constantly feed my audience or feed my clients with something new that's going to keep me relevant? And then resilience, because there's always going to be challenges and obstacles that come your way, but you have to know that that does not mean that that's a sign that you should give up, or that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a sign that you should go a different way. So just making sure that you are resilient and just understand that failure and challenges and obstacles are a part of the process, but know that you can get through it. So that is, I know that's a handful, but, just kind of going back to a few of those, will kind of help you to hone in on those skills that are necessary to be an entrepreneur.
I think that's a really great and very comprehensive list of skills. What are some things that people might not necessarily know about being an entrepreneur that they need to consider before they might go into business for themselves?
Okay, and I think this kind of ties into some of the things that I've mentioned too. One of them is that you have to be skilled in a lot of areas, not just in the service or product that you provide. So if you are in IT, or if you make apps, or whatever it might be. I'm a lawyer, but I have to do more than just be a lawyer. If all I knew how to do was contracts or file trademarks, then how am I going to actually get people in the door? How am I going to reach more people or keep my clients if I don't understand marketing, or if I don't understand how to follow up and different things like that? So marketing essentially is the key to knowing how people think. And so out of all those lists of things, marketing is one of the key things that I would say. Another thing is that I know that a lot of people think that, you can separate a personal and a business brand. And when it comes to being an entrepreneur, especially a solo entrepreneur, you are your business's brand. It's one brand. We don't get the opportunity like a big corporation like Coca-Cola or Procter and Gamble that, we don't have to see who is the one selling us the product or who is the one making the decisions. Those are big companies. They get that luxury. But as smaller entrepreneurs, people want to see who they're working with. Nowadays, I don't even, work with someone unless I go to their website and I can see, a little bio about them or whatever it might be. So there's really no such thing as separating, especially when it comes to a service. If you're giving a personal service, there's no such thing as having like a personal Instagram page and then a professional Instagram page. They're both you. And so if someone sees on your personal Instagram page something that they're not comfortable with, they're not going to buy your product or your service. So just making sure that you understand that your brand is key. There's one brand, and that, being skilled in a few different areas is going to help you to be a more successful entrepreneur.
Great. So now, aside from being your own business owner, you also volunteer with AKPsi. So how has your volunteering helped you advance your career?
Wow. I have been a volunteer with AKPsi, I think it's 6 years now, which is super cool. Time is flying. So as soon as I graduated, I became a chapter advisor for, Emory's chapter, which was very cool. And I love that experience. Being a volunteer with AKPsi, it has, not only expanded my network, but I've received so much support from both student and alumni brothers. AKPsi also allows me the opportunity as a volunteer to share some information about what I do during AKPsi presentations. So sometimes I host a presentation at PBLI or officer training or chapter meetings, and so that provides an opportunity for me to get in front of more brothers or more people or whatever it might be, just to share my story, because I don't only do law. I also, speak at different schools and universities and different things like that. So it allows me to share my story and kind of share what I'm passionate about, and gives me a great platform because I truly do love AKPsi, and I want to help the fraternity and the chapters and the students to make the most of this opportunity that we have through AKPsi. And so actually now a lot of brothers refer clients to me, and I have quite a few brothers that are actually clients now, and I'm helping them develop their business. And so, once you're a brother, it's a lot more trust involved as well. And so I really do help or enjoy helping my brothers and those in AKPsi, build their business. And so I get an overwhelming support and an opportunity to really be in front of more people through everything that we do in AKPsi.
See, that's really great. I know another way that you've kind of started to get back is with your book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Building a Solid Legal Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Maybe what were your motivations for writing it?
Sure. So I released that book the day before my birthday, released it on November 23rd of last year, 2016. And the reason was because at that time, I had opened my firm for almost a year by then. And I realized that a lot of new entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs were so intimidated by the legal aspects of business. Like they were intimidated about talking to a lawyer or talking about law or whatever it might be. And it's like, you know what? If they're really serious about business, they really can't afford not to pay attention to the law. So I really had to figure out a way to get this information in front of people. And so that's when it came out with the book. And actually the book was going to be an article at first. And then I said, wait, I have so much more to write about. And an article just wasn't sufficing. And so when I was, telling some friends and colleagues, they were telling me, Dayna, this is not an article, this is a book. And so I actually ended up publishing it after I got that feedback that it was just so much information in there. And so, yeah, I really didn't want aspiring and new entrepreneurs and even more seasoned entrepreneurs to not pay attention to contracts, to LLCs, to, not understand the difference between LLCs and S Corps, or not know how to protect your brand with a trademark or how to own your logo. All these things are super important for any entrepreneur. And so sometimes it's hard to kind of get them in a lawyer's office, but, I can always get them to read the handbook. So that was something that influenced me or motivated me to write it, because I really do love entrepreneurs, but I know they can't afford or choose to ignore the legal sides of business. So this is another way for me to reach them.
That's great, and as we have here on the image of the screen, if you're interested in buying her book, it is available through her website. Now, you've clearly done a lot of different things throughout your career so far. What are some obstacles that you've had to face in your career?
Yes. One of the biggest obstacles that I have had, and I'm working on right now, is delegating tasks. And so as an entrepreneur, as I mentioned kind of before, it seems like you have to do everything yourself. But you know what? That's really going to hinder your growth if you don't learn how to delegate certain things. So at first I was doing everything myself. Like I built my website myself. I did my logo myself. I created my business cards myself. You know, everything. I keep up with my blog and my social media myself. I was doing the legal work, plus answering all the emails, plus answering all the phones and everything. So I was doing everything myself. But then, especially from this year, being in my second year in business now, this year showed me, okay, Dayna, you're one person, and you can grow with your business if you actually delegate tasks to certain people. And so actually, my first step was getting a legal assistant, an intern. So I have an intern that helps with the legal sides of business. So she helps me to draft contracts and form trademarks and different things like that. And so I also have an administrative assistant now, and that assistant helps me with sending emails, scheduling, answering phone calls, returning voicemails. And so that, you know, oddly enough, was very difficult for me because I'm thinking, are they going to know what to say, you know, or what to write or whatever it might be. But I had to learn that in order for me to grow with my business, I had to let go of some things. And so some things I won't let go of. I'm always going to be the one, you know, to give the consultation. If you schedule a consultation with me, I'm always going to make sure that your work is done, you know, correctly, and I'm reviewing it if it's not, you know, if my intern assists with getting some research or whatever it might be. But you know what? For any business, you have to learn to delegate tasks for things that, you know, especially things that you're not getting paid for. I'm not getting paid to create my website and create my logo. I can delegate that to someone who is experienced in website and brand design. And so that's something that I have learned, that it really takes a team to build you into the strong entrepreneur that you want to be.
That's great. I know that's a struggle for a lot of different people, so you're not alone, Dayna.
Mm-hmm.
What struggles do you specifically see for women, or do you see any struggles being a woman in business?
Yes. You know what, and I get that question a lot, and I have like such an odd answer, but the answer is like I really don't see any struggles, and that's because I really believe, going back to this again, it all starts with your mindset. So if you think that being a woman or being a minority or being young, which I have all of that, you know, for me, I'm a young entrepreneur, you know, I'm a minority and also a woman, but I don't believe that any of that holds me back from anything, because it's really in my mind. If I'm feeling like, okay, I didn't get that client because I'm a woman, or I didn't get that client because I'm young, then that's really going to hold me back from being the best that I can be. And so if I believe that there's nothing that can stop me, then there's nothing that can stop me. And so as an entrepreneur, or a female entrepreneur for you, if you truly believe that there is nothing that's going to stop you from achieving the goals or getting the clients that you want or being successful in your business, then that's absolutely true. You know, you have to know in your mind that there's no blanket rule, or if there is a blanket rule, you are the exception to that. It doesn't matter if, you know, society says that women this or women that, or, you know, it's treated unfair. Those might be the facts. But you can think in your mind, okay, those are the facts, but it doesn't apply to me because I know that I am different. I know in my head that I'll be successful no matter what. I know that I can get this client because I'm different from everybody else. Not only women, I'm different from the men or whoever else might be in my industry. So you have to know in your head that, you know, there's no way around being exceptionally great at what you do. You know, so be great. If you're great at what you do, there's nothing that's going to stop you. You know, whether that's being a woman, whether that's anything else, whether that's, you know, how much money working capital you have, or whatever it is, there's always a way to get over those hurdles that other people might see. But if you feel in your head that you have everything going for you and every resource and every tool, then that's truly, you know, the truth. So I really feel like I've never been at a disadvantage being a female entrepreneur.
That's great to hear. What kind of advice would you have for kind of young women that are interested in becoming a business, what they can do to help prepare themselves now?
Sure. You really have to be dedicated to your craft. Work on being the best and doing things that others are not doing. I often call that, you know, being extra. And so when I say being extra, not in the way of like being flamboyant, but you have to think outside of the box. how can you do things that other people are not doing? So if everyone else is marketing a certain way, or everyone else in your industry is doing something, or you're going to a conference, and you kind of want to meet someone, and there's 200 other people at the conference, don't just go to the conference and leave and nobody really knows who you are. Figure out how you can, stand out at the conference. Whether one time I went to a conference for Damon John, and I found out what every single staff member's name was, even the person doing the IT and the AV and all of that, like down to every single person. I figured out what their name was. And then the next day I went and bought some thank you cards because it was a weekend conference. I bought thank you cards and wrote each of them a personalized thank you note. Each person got a different note from me. And so when I gave that to them, that allowed me to build genuine relationships that I still have right now, that they want to work with me on certain projects. And so always think about how you can stand out and how you can make yourself really good and exceptional at whatever you do. And lastly, eliminate any kind of negativity from your environment. Make sure that you go after the things that seem difficult or seem impossible, so that when you actually do achieve them, your confidence will grow. And so overall, that's what I would say. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure that you're excellent at what you do. Think outside of the box and eliminate that negativity.
That is great, Dayna. So we're going to transition. It's going to be our last question before we start taking Q&A from our listeners here. So some of our attendees listening might be aspiring entrepreneurs themselves. So what advice would you give them for starting their business and moving forward?
Sure. So I have my BOSS acronym that I use and came up with, and we'll go through it. And so B is for building relationships. And so when I say building relationships, that's as opposed to networking. So when I think of networking, you think of you're kind of in a room feeling very uncomfortable. You have your business cards and you're kind of just giving it out to people, telling them, who you are, but not really having a genuine conversation with them, or really wanting to see how that can be a mutual relationship. It's kind of getting your name out there and giving out as many business cards as you can, and that, never turns into anything. So that's networking. Relationship building or building relationships is so much different. And so for me, when I'm building relationships, yes, that may involve, getting business cards or giving business cards, but it all involves so much follow-up after, And so for me, when I meet someone influential or someone that I want to build a relationship with, I actually don't even ask them for anything for a whole year. So I will go a whole year and not ask you for anything. However, I am still communicating with you for that year. And so one time I actually had this attorney that I wanted to work for. And so I met her, emailed her every other month, 6 times throughout the year, and she had not emailed me back one time throughout that whole thing. But, I was very confident that she was getting my emails, and I knew that I wanted to work for her one day. And so it was important for me to be in her inbox. And so I would tell her about what I was doing in school and, ask about her business and talk about what I had done over the summer, what my interests were. Didn't ask for anything. I didn't ask for internships. I didn't ask for coffee. I didn't ask to pick your brain. I didn't ask to do any of that. However, after a whole year went by, I had just finished doing a clerkship over the summer. And so I had emailed her and I told her more about, my clerkship. She had still never replied to me before then. And so I said to her, if you ever need assistance in your office, I'd be happy to help. And that was the first time that I ever kind of made a semi-ask to her. And she replied right away saying, "Oh, Dayna, it's so great to hear from you. I'm glad the summer went well," as if we had been talking for so long. So in her head, we had a relationship, and she invited me to come into her office, didn't even really interview me. We had lunch, and then she hired me. And so I ended up working for her for about a year and a half. And that was a product of building relationships. So that matters so much more than just networking. So that's the B. O is online marketing or online branding. And so you have to use this time now that you are in school to brand yourself as whatever you want to be known for. So even if you don't have aspirations of being an entrepreneur, if you do, whatever that product or service is that you want to offer, start branding yourself in that way. So when I was in school, what I did was I actually started a blog. And with that blog, I would write about different topics in entertainment and entrepreneurship because I knew that I was going to start my firm, and I didn't want to seem like a rookie. I wanted people to have been hearing entertainment and entrepreneurship from me for years. So from my first or second year in law school, I started this blog, and I would talk about the legal take on the most popular things in entertainment or the most popular things in entrepreneurship. And I would tweet those articles out, and I'd have it on my blog website, and I'd put links to it on Facebook. And so people have been seeing me doing that consistently, for 2-3 years. So when it came time to start my law firm, it didn't seem like, okay, all of a sudden Dayna wants to be do entertainment and entrepreneurship. We only see her talk about her friends and family on social media. They had already seen me for doing this for so long that it did not seem like I was a rookie. Some of them didn't even know that I had just become a lawyer, even though when I was online branding, I wasn't really putting myself out as a lawyer. I was putting myself as a law student, but then also, authority on some legal topics. And so that helped me a lot to not seem like a rookie when I first started. So if you have dreams or aspirations of doing anything, whether it's in entrepreneurship, putting out a product or service, then start branding yourself in that way right now. You don't have to sell anything right now, but start putting out some content so people start to know you for, whatever that business or that brand is. The first S is self-education. Kind of touched on that a little bit before too. And so that is constantly feeding yourself knowledge and information about whatever it is that you want to do. Again, school and professional education is only going to teach you so much. When you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to teach yourself a lot more. So for me, that was webinars like this. I spent so much time on webinars like this so that I could take notes and get little nuggets from people who are doing what I want to do. And so webinars, podcasts, there's websites and apps for podcasts. And so if you just Google entrepreneurship or whatever the topic is that you're interested in, there are podcasts on there for everything. And so there was a certain time where I was in my car and I would never listen to music in the car because I was constantly listening to podcasts. So I was constantly feeding myself information, whether it was accounting for lawyers or marketing for lawyers or, how to do something as a solo practitioner. And so I learned a lot of that through webinars and marketing and, of course, books. There's sometimes there's no way to replace books, but some books that I got. And so sometimes it was electronically, through the podcasts and webinars as well. But constantly educating myself on what I needed to know that school wasn't teaching me. And then lastly was strategizing. You have to come up with a plan. What is your plan for how you're going to do this? Because you don't want to first think about your plan when you graduate school. You want to make sure that you have that plan laid out. And of course, you can always add to it, and then your plan will never be perfect. You will never know everything you need to know before you start. And if you wait to figure out everything before you start, you'll probably never start. So just make sure that you can use this time while you're in school or over the summer to start strategizing and really writing out a plan. And so one key thing that helped me was I call it the red, yellow, green method. And so what I did was I wrote out all of my, all the services that I wanted to offer. So it was probably a list of like 40 different services. And so I broke it down to every single type of contract that I wanted to offer. And so I highlighted in red those services that I did not know how to do yet. Like I'd never been exposed to it. I never did it before. I don't feel comfortable charging people for it at this point. And then I highlighted in yellow things that I kind of felt comfortable with. I might have done it before, but I might need some more experience or training on it. And then I highlighted in green the things that I was ready to go. Like I knew how to do it. I felt comfortable charging people for it. I've done it several times before, and I'm good to go on that. And so the goal was to make sure that I got everything into the green, or at least not everything, because again, everything is not going to be perfect, but as much as I can into the green and moving from the red to the yellow and yellow to the green so that I could feel comfortable knowing, okay, I have a good solid foundation of things that I can offer and I feel comfortable doing. So that's a little tip that I can give to you guys if you know enough to really start a business or have enough to offer. Or even could really make money from what you're doing. So that was a part of my strategy as well. And I even figured out how much money I needed to make every single day, to meet my financial goals. And so a lot of times that fear comes from, am I really going to make money? How am I going to get customers and how am I going to get clients? But if you really figure out what you need to do and strategize, that's going to be so much more helpful than kind of having everything in your head and you don't really know what you have to do to be successful. So that is my BOSS acronym. And I really believe that if you guys kind of go through that and really live through that, especially starting now while you're in school or before you launch or start your business, that can help you to be more confident, in your craft and becoming an entrepreneur.
Great. Thank you so much, Dayna. So we do have about 15 minutes left, so we're going to take all of the questions from our listeners right now. So if you haven't already, remember you can open the Q&A widget from the menu dock to submit your questions. This feature will remain open even in on-demand viewing. So if we don't get to your question, we will respond via email afterwards. This time we're going to go and get started with the first question we have here. And you kind of talked about it a little bit, but is it hard for you being a woman of color in such a major leadership role?
No, not for me, because I really feel like there's nothing that can stop me from doing anything that I want to do. And that's not because, I started off with a huge investment. I didn't have any investors. I didn't have to do it money or anything like that. It just really became from me, feeding my mind that I had all the tools necessary to do it. And so, no, it has not been hard being a woman of color. If anything, it's been beneficial for me because I'm always standing out, and so whether it's a certain organization and I'm the only, Black woman there, they're wondering, everybody wants to meet me because obviously I'm where you are. So that's been beneficial. And a lot of times, people feel more comfortable, working with people that look like them. And sometimes that's true. I market to everyone, but, sometimes that can be beneficial as well. So if you think that certain things are going to hold you back, then it probably will. But if you think that you have everything at your fingertips and, the universe is really going in your way and that's the kind of mentality you have, then that doesn't mean that everything is going to be smooth and perfect. That just means that when things aren't smooth, it's not going to be forever and that it's just temporary and it's only a matter of time until you get over that.
Great. The next question we have is, you mentioned how it's really important to kind of understand marketing. What is the definition of marketing to you?
Ooh, I like my definition. And so my definition of marketing, is getting people to do what you want them to do. Getting people to do what you want them to do. And so that can be in a variety of ways. But the key is understanding who you're trying to go after. So my target market, which is a part of marketing to understanding your target market, is I'll stick to the entrepreneurship side, is aspiring and new entrepreneurs. I do work with veteran entrepreneurs, but veteran entrepreneurs, they know why they need a lawyer. They've been in business for a while. But the ones that I have to really market to are the aspiring new entrepreneurs who feel like, I don't really want to pay attention to legal. So I kind of have to teach them that. And so I have to figure out ways, okay, how do I get them to really pay attention to the legal side or, come to my events or buy the book or understand, like, if you got a trademark, your brand will be able to make so much more money. And so marketing really is getting people to do what you want them to do. And that is, and for me, that way is providing value to them. If you follow me on social media, my social media name is DaynaThomasLaw.com. Dayna Thomas Law. Everything on social media is Dayna Thomas Law. You'll see that I give so much free information because I know that my target market and part of me marketing to them is that I have to give that information so they understand why they need a lawyer. They understand why they need to protect their business or why they need to protect their brand. So that is the way that I get them to do what I need them to do, which is really pay attention to the legal aspects of business and really protect your business and your brand.
Great. The next question we have here is, how do you find trustworthy people that you want to see your business prosper in the way that you do, so that way you can delegate your tasks to them?
Okay. So I will say this, that is a struggle for me. But the way that I have overcome that is I hire people that I have a relationship with. And so when I hire, and I've hired 3 times already, I don't ask for resumes. I don't ask for grades if it's an intern. I don't ask for GPAs. I don't do an interview. I don't do any of that, because if I'm going to hire you, then I need to already know you. So it's kind of like, if I already know you, then I already trust you. So I know some lawyers kind of put it on the listserv. I'm looking for, whoever they're looking for, but that's not my style, because I'm not going to really know, again, like you said, if you're trustworthy or not. And so there's a lot of opportunities for people to connect with me, whether that's online or coming to one of my events, or, participating in a webinar and building a relationship from there. And I kind of talked about how you build a relationship, but those are the people that I choose from. And so that has been very helpful for me as well, because I know already, from your emails, I know how your writing sample, I know how you write, I know the tone that you have in your emails, I know how appropriate you are, whatever it might be. I know that you make time to come to my events, or you have seen me speak so many times that you already know, how I think, or the message that I want to get across. My next intern, she's come to my event. She's heard my presentation. I do a specific presentation, a different one than this. She's heard it probably like 5 times already. And so I'm so comfortable with hiring her, because she knows what's important to me. And so that's what helps me with the trustworthiness, is kind of, I already know who you are. I've had a relationship with you for over, a year, close to a year. And so that helps me to eliminate that I'm working with a stranger that I don't know is trustworthy or not.
All right, so you mentioned that you've read a lot of different books throughout your time. So what are some books or authors that you feel really helped educate you the most in your specific field of entrepreneurship and entertainment?
Okay. There's this book that I love. Hold on. I can't remember the name of this book, but there is a particular book that I really love, and I can't even, Launch. That's what it's called. It's called Launch. There's a book called Launch. I forgot the author, but it's a blue cover, and I think he's like a bestseller. So if you look online, you'll be able to see it. But he is teaching you how to leverage your resources, especially online, to get people to buy into what you're doing, kind of how you have to brand yourself and market yourself as an entrepreneur in order for people to buy into your product or service. That book has so many tips and tricks on how you can really leverage the internet and email marketing and all this stuff, so that you can reach people that's outside of like your direct network. So even though I'm based in Atlanta, a lot of the tips that I learned in that book, which is called Launch, that has helped me to reach clients from all over the country, and I can service them because, I do transactions, and with a transactional lawyer, you can really service clients anywhere. And so that is one particular book that I would definitely say that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right, I just looked it up, Dayna. It looks like we have 2 options. It's either Jeff Walker. Does that
Jeff Walker. Yep.
Okay.
Thank
That
you.
was the first one. So I will go ahead and post that in the group chat so you guys can remember if you're interested in that book. It is Launch by Jeff Walker. All right, and the next question we have is, so do you think it's more beneficial to sell a product in a store or online?
Okay, so it depends. I don't recommend getting an investment to start your own store if this is your first business. That will give you so much stress, and that's a lot of risk involved, because one, you have to have inventory, you'll have so much overhead, you'll have rent to take care of. However, if you have a product that you kind of want to do a licensing deal, which could be like, you want to, or kind of a vendor deal, you can get your product into a store. That's helpful, because, that's another avenue for you to get your product in front of most customers. However, if you don't have an opportunity to sell your product in someone else's store who already has a built-in audience, who's already taking care of, the overhead, I'm sure you'll work out some kind of strategy where they'll get a certain % of your sales. But if you don't have access to that, I don't recommend your first business being, brick and mortar, store, a physical store. There's going to be too much to keep up with. So I would definitely recommend an online store. It's so much cheaper, less overhead, and I know so many ways that you can really drive traffic to your online store, and you can have a much higher profit margin that way, and it's less risky. So I'll definitely go the online store route.
All right. The next question we have is, we know that mentors are really important when it comes to starting a business or being successful in general. So how would you go about suggesting finding a mentor?
So finding a mentor goes back to building relationships. So that same process that I told you, so I kind of walk you through it, of how to get a real genuine mentor. And so first, what I would say is target someone. That's what I did. You target someone. So you can go online if you have no idea, who could be a possible mentor for you. You can go online and do a Google search for people in your area, influential people in your area, that you would love to get, that are doing what you want to do or how you think would be a good mentor for you, right? And so target a few people. Figure out what they're interested in. See if they're doing any speaking engagements. Look on their social media. Where are they going to be? So if you see that they're advertising for a particular event, then go to that event, whatever it might be, and introduce yourself there. If you don't get an opportunity to go to an event, then, you can do a cold email, but, you can do a cold email, which means that an email, they don't know who you are. You never really met them. But if you do have an opportunity to meet them, go there. Have a business card. You know how many students don't have business cards? Probably like 95% of them. I was one of them that did. And so it's so impressive when, a professional or a CEO, whatever it might be, gives you a business card and you give them one back. They're not going to be used to that. And that's one way for you to stand out. And then so the follow-up process, again, follow with them right after. You have follow up with them the next day or no later than 48 hours after. And then I'll follow up with them maybe like 2 weeks later, to see how they're doing, how their business is going. And then what I'll do is I'll probably follow up maybe a month or two later and send them an article. So I'll find some kind of article. If I know that they're into IT, I'm going to find an article online about the latest trends in IT and send them that article and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, or hello, Mrs. So-and-so, this is Dayna Thomas. I know that your firm specializes in, IT, whatever it might be. And so I came across this article and I thought that would be, interesting to you. I hope you enjoy it. That's it. Don't ask for anything. And constantly, send follow-up emails, talk about who you are, show some interest in who they are. And so that builds a genuine connection over time. And so you don't really have to ask someone to be your mentor. If you ask someone to be your mentor, for me, it doesn't really seem very genuine. So it can grow into that. Once students show me who they really are, I get more invested in them, innately, because we are starting to build a relationship. And so if they need some information or advice, along the way, then I'm so happy to give it. And so for one of the mentors that I have now, we had been communicating online for about a year, and our first time having coffee was after that. Not saying it has to be a whole year, but I'm super appreciative of a student or someone who wants me to mentor them if they're just genuinely, not just looking to pick my brain, or they generally want a relationship over time. So that's what I would say. That's kind of the pathway to really get a mentor that's invested in you.
Great. So we are at just about 8 o'clock, so this is going to be our last question. So how do you balance a work-life balance, especially with all of your volunteering and during the start of building a business?
Okay. So you have to be very intentional with everything that you do, because as an entrepreneur, especially a full-time entrepreneur, it can be very easy to work 7 days a week. However, you can make sure, one, that you are scheduling time off, so scheduling days off. I have in my calendar, it's like no appointments today. And so at first, and this is something that I learned over time, at first I was taking meetings every day, Monday through Friday. Whichever day you wanted to meet with me, we would meet. If you wanted to have a phone call, we would meet. If you wanted to have coffee, we're just meeting any day, any time that works for you. But then I realized that I was just meeting with people all the time, and I didn't really have time for other things, whether that was doing the actual legal work or whatever the case might be. And so I learned now I only do meetings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, because I have to use some time during the week to actually do the work. And so now that I have been able to kind of set my schedule up the way that I want it, it makes it easier to kind of allocate time. And sometimes you're going to work a lot more, than other weeks, but I make sure that I put in the calendar off days. And then, being an entrepreneur is also great that I can, if I visit my family in Florida, because I have family in Florida and family in New York, that doesn't mean that my business has to stop. I can just work virtually, or I can, do phone consultations or whatever it might be. So then, for me, I feel like it's easier to create that work-life balance, especially if you learn to delegate some of those tasks. If I was still doing everything on my own for my business, it would be a lot harder. So you really have to be intentional about the time that you're allocating for yourself.
Great. Thank you for that, Dayna. So at this point, I want to thank all of our participants and callers for your guys' great questions and comments. Really added to our conversation today. If you do have any follow-up questions or conversation, feel free to contact Dayna using the information that's provided on the screen. And again, thank you, Dayna, for all of your great insight on the topic tonight. Finally, we do encourage you to look at the additional resources provided by AKPsi. On AKPsi.org, you can find more webinars and other resources related to professional and leadership development. If you're interested in AKPsi specific chapter operational-based resources, you can visit myakpsi.org for webinars, e-learnings, and documents, which can be found under the Road to Brotherhood. If you have any suggestions for future topics, please send them to education@akpsi.org. Again, I want to thank you to all of our people calling in today and thank Dayna for the great conversation.
Oh, my